Hey everybody, it's Dave here, and we lost Darren again. How about that? Darren's up in Canada, and he's having some technical difficulties at this time. I'm sure he will be right back. In the meantime, you've got me in split screen, which is definitely weird. Let's see. Let's go back to full screen since it's just me at the moment. Okay. Now, what did you think of last night? That's my question to everybody. With Darren and I discussed, we're going to talk about three players. Three players, starting with Osborn, going to from there, we're going to pick out, hey there, Viking Jerome, even more. And it looks like Darren may be back. Hold on one second. Boom. Nope, not that one. Darren, can you talk to us?
Hello.
Hey.
Can you hear me?
Yes, and we're live on the air. So.
Good.
Boom, I'll do this. Here we go. I was just introducing. I was asking everybody what they thought of last night and all the festivities that went on, and telling them that we were going to talk about originally, and we still plan on it, KJ Osborn was our first player. And then we were going into, from there, talk about what is Zimmer doing on the offensive line? Which is,
yeah, I did like a weekly question.
And then Danielle Hunter, what we're seeing so far from Danielle Hunter. But as we all know, last night, right before the big practice at night in TCO Stadium, it's announced that Kellen Mond, our rookie drafted quarterback, comes down with a breakthrough case of COVID. He's tested positive. Kellen Mond had been vaccinated, thus the breakthrough case. He's got it again. But due to NFL protocols, anybody that was in close contact with him that has not been vaccinated must quarantine for a minimum of 5 days. And of that list, Kirk Cousins, we just confirmed last night, is one of those that is not vaccinated. There's some others on the team that are reportedly not vaccinated, but Kirk Cousins, our starting quarterback and key to the season, is not one of them. And Mike Zimmer was just a wee bit frustrated knowing that this could happen. And it could happen at the most inopportune times. Kirk Cousins wasn't the only one out. So was Nate Stanley. Jake Reed had to take all the snaps. And also our drafted new guard, Wyatt Davis, was out because I believe it's because he was in close proximity as well to Kellen Mond. He was snapping to him. What do you think of all that nice COVID protocol stuff that affected the team? We're not getting political on whether you should or should not take it. That's up to you. But when it comes to football, it obviously affects the squad. What do you think, Darren?
Well, like you said, Dave, it's the vaccination thing is a charged issue. It's personal choice, whether you should or not. And in the U.S. of A., that's even more of a where individuality and do your own thing, and the government's not going to tell me what to do is seems to be more of a national ethos than maybe it is here in Canada. But that depends on the person too. But the fact is that your employer, if you're an NFL player, your employer. And the Vikings are the employer for those players, but the NFL is the overall employer. They've got these protocols in place for unvaccinated players, and we've heard Cole Beasley talk about his reservations about that, and I had no problem with what Beasley had to say about all of that stuff. I mean, that's his opinion, and he's entitled to it. But the fact is that if you're a player and you're not vaccinated, this is the work environment for you this year. And we just saw last night that for unvaccinated players, and Kirk Cousins is one of those, and he did not say whether he was vaccinated or not when he had a chance to, when he was asked about it about a month ago. And again, I don't think that's anybody's business. But now we know that he isn't vaccinated, and the fact of the matter is that this is the work environment, and if if you get COVID and you're unvaccinated or you're a close contact, you're out for a certain amount of time, and the reason Zimmer is upset is that he's got no other quarterbacks other than Cousins who's taken an NFL snap ever. And if this happens during a regular season game and Cousins either gets COVID or is a close contact again, and it very well can happen, it may happen multiple times this year. That's just the world we're living in. If Cousins is a close contact and he's not fully vaccinated, he's probably not going to be able to play that game. And in the NFL, I don't care what week it is, it's a critical game. You've got 17 games now. You can't afford to have the guy who's the starting quarterback for your team. And again, the only guy who's ever taken NFL snaps in an NFL game, if he's out, the Vikings are hooped. I don't care how Browning looked last night, and apparently he played pretty well. But you're not going up against an opponent. You're not getting pressured really. It's all. If the Vikings thought that Browning was a viable option in the previous years, he would have been your backup quarterback instead of Sean Mannion. So I don't really have much faith in what the Vikings have right now. Kellen Mond, this is probably going to be a redshirt year for him, and this hurts for him too because he's now he was vaccinated, and you can get COVID if you're vaccinated, but usually that if you do get it, your symptoms are going to be very mild. You're going to be okay. I think for the players like Cousins who aren't vaccinated, sure, you can't get vaccinated, but you're leaving your team in a precarious situation. And Zimmer is upset because he is in a critical year, I think, and he can't afford to have players who have the option to be vaccinated. I think maybe there's a medical reason why Cousins can't get vaccinated. Again, we're not going to know about that, but most players will be able to get vaccinated. And if you're doing it as a choice, whether for whatever reason the work environment is that these things happen and you're not vaccinated, you're probably not going to be playing that week and maybe the following week if you do have COVID. And that could cost your team, especially if you're a key player, that could cost your team a football game, maybe two. Maybe you get it again later on in the season at an even more critical time, and boom. And Zimmer can't afford to have his team, key players, missing games and then missing the playoffs this year, or else he's going to be canned. And so he wants everybody to get vaccinated because it's in his best interests. I don't know if he cares too much about the health of the guys. I hope he does, but that's that. One thing I will say about the vaccinated, non-vaccinated thing, for those who are not vaccinated, I think I've read, like, for African-American players, there's an issue to some of them because they have, in communities and African-American communities over the past history, the history between the medical system and them there have been some issues. So there's some distrust there. And we have this similar thing in Canada right now where Indigenous people, or what you Yanks would call Native Americans, have not always been treated very well by the federal government and provincial governments. And there's a huge mistrust with the medical system there. And we have some issues getting Indigenous people vaccinated in Canada. I think there might be similar things with African Americans. But right now, I don't know what information the players are getting, right? Like, about when they're making these decisions about, hopefully the teams are bringing in medical professionals to give them the most unfiltered, honest advice they can. But if players are thinking, I'm young, I'm healthy, my immune system is great, it's very unlikely I'll get caught. Well, the Delta variant, for one, is now it's infecting people who aren't vaccinated in particular, and younger people, and more severe outcomes. So this isn't the old and original COVID strain that you're dealing with now. You're dealing with variants that attack younger people, young, healthy people like Kirk Cousins. I think it's also a health issue for you personally, as well as a football issue.
And I agree. I think besides the self-motivation from Mike Zimmer, I think he actually cares. He's publicly stated he wants everybody in the country to get it. It's frustrating. I understand both sides of the arguments. I've seen them both. It's just protect yourself the best you can. That's your number one priority. Now, Kirk Cousins, I'm hearing the reason he hasn't is due to his religious beliefs. If that's the case, I have a little disagreement with him on that. But hey, it is what it is. Hopefully we can overcome it. But I think last night Jake Reed stepped up. He started out slow, but from what I gather, he was outstanding. He was hitting long ball after long ball, tight passes. Adam Thielen looked great. Justin Jefferson looked great. And also, one of the beautiful long passes was to KJ Osborn.
Our boy.
You wanted to talk about KJ Osborn. Now, KJ Osborn, just to preface real quick, with Bisi Johnson tore his ACL Friday. And he's going to be out for the season, most likely. That improves KJ Osborn's chance to make the starting 53 in the wide receiver room. Not necessarily as a punt returner, because he was horrible at it, but as a wide receiver. he has stood out so far in camp, and you wanted to talk about it.
Yeah, not because I've seen KJ Osborn, other than a few clips on the Vikings. The Osborn is coming up,
Mhm.
Matt Anderson. Matt, I don't care who's coming up as long as somebody's coming up. I think that a lot of us assumed when Dede Westbrook was signed that he'd be the number 3. Like the Vikings have options. I don't know if they're great options, but Chad Beebe is a known commodity, not much of a commodity and rarely healthy, but he is a commodity. Sometimes he looks okay. We got.
Will Raggett says he's much better than Chad Beebe so far.
Yeah, well, hey, that's great. Bisi Johnson had a strong rookie season, pretty encouraging one last year. He was forgotten because J.J. Jefferson passed him, and then the Vikings don't use the number 3 very much, and they used Beebe more than Osborn, really, more than Johnson. Really, Johnson, the only game where he had an impact, I think, was the Carolina game, in which Thielen was out that game, so BC was in there as basically, and I think he got 7 catches or whatever for about 60, 70 yards. But he's out, so he's not an option. You got the rookie Smith-Marsette or Marsette Smith or whatever. He's a big wild card. We don't know. We know he's fast. We knew he possibly could be a kickoff return guy. Not the greatest route runner, apparently. It remains to be seen what he has. But if KJ Osborn, basically, I thought this guy was like guaranteed cut. Wasn't going to make the team. Terrible returning punts and kickoffs last year, and he's not going to be doing that. And didn't get an offensive snap last year. And I'm like, 5th round pick, really didn't see anything, and we didn't see preseason games, so we didn't know what kind of flashes he had. To hear that he is going into training camp and actually catching significant passes, even though it's in training camp, even though it's in practices, that gives me some hope. Dede Westbrook is the guy that I liked the late signing, even though there's probably a reason he was out on the market as long as he was. But he's a guy who could return punts and had been, caught more passes than any of the other guys that we had besides Thielen and Jefferson in his career. I think it's between him and Osborn. But if Osborn is coming along, more power to him. He was a fairly well-used receiver in his last year as a senior in Miami. Didn't have a great scouting report. Didn't seem like he had any really significant identifying outstanding trait. Was he a great route runner? I didn't read that. He was fine at it. Was he super fast? No. Great hands.
He's not maybe slow though.
Not slow, and I hope as a wide receiver,
4.3, 4.4, 4.4.
Yeah, no, I mean that's really fast for us guys. But again, what was his identifying outstanding trait? Didn't seem to have one, and last year didn't play in a game other on special teams. So really encouraging to hear that he's doing well. We'll wait to see in the preseason games if he can continue to flash. I think that'll be like an additional sign that, hey, maybe the Vikings have something here that he can contribute. With Bisi Johnson out, and we know that it's only a matter of time before Chad Beebe is hurt, it'd be good to know that somebody is stepping up like KJ Osborn. And we'll see what Dede Westbrook has in store. He didn't play very much last year due to injuries, and I don't know if that's still hampering him now. We haven't really heard much about him.
Well, he's supposedly fully recovered from his ACL, but they are bringing him on slowly. I think they're cautious on all the players that are recovering from some sort of injury or surgery.
Like Christian Darrisaw.
Yes. And
yeah. Anyway,
but I think he's earning it. There has been stuff written on KJ Osborn almost every day of camp so far at how well he's looking, how he's blowing by corners, how he's making marvelous catches, how he's in the right spots, and he's on his way to earning that wide receiver 3 spot, which I think is good. Hey, if they can earn it and he can beat out Chad Beebe, by all means. If he can beat out even Westbrook, once Westbrook gets out there, by all means, that means he's better than Westbrook. I'm cool with that.
And Westbrook's only a 1-year deal, so even if
Right.
somehow Westbrook was playing this year more than Osborn, if Osborn shows something during training camp and in the 3 preseason games, and comes along during the year, then the Vikings don't have to re-sign Westbrook. They can they can go with Osborn, who'll be a little bit cheaper, is a little bit younger, and he's your own guy. Happy with that. I'm still skeptical about the whole Osborn thing until I see him do it against competition other than his own teammates.
Right.
But
in pads against competitions.
Against competition, when there's a bit more pressure. Not to say for a guy like him, there's pressure in training camp, because I'm sure he's going into this knowing I have nothing guaranteed for me this year with what happened last year. I have to go out and perform. And so far he is doing that. So big claps to KJ Osborn. Fairly unexpected, at least to me, that he is doing what he's doing. But like you say, if every day of training camp, and we're only not even a week into it, but if every day into training camp there's a highlight or a mention of KJ Osborn from different people, when Zimmer said it and then Spielman said it, we're all kind of like, yeah, whatever, But when other people who are watching the practices are saying that, that tells me that this is Osborn's movement, his improvement is perhaps legitimate, and he could be the number 3 guy. And as long as somebody is and they can perform in that position, again, don't care who it is. And full marks to Osborn for, obviously he must have put in a ton of work in the past 12 months to get from where he was to where he is now.
If I remember correctly, I think he was working with Justin Jefferson down in Florida.
Not a bad guy to be working with.
Mm-hmm. So I do believe I read that somewhere. Well, that's good. Now, that brings us, we talked about Darisaw and his slow injury response. I read this morning where they expect him back soon. Famous last words. And Mike Zimmer called it a slight pull.
What does that actually mean for the Vikings, right?
And Mike Zimmer called it a slight pull, and he's recovering from core muscle surgery in the groin area, right? So that does take a while. He says soon. He's not going to call it a tweak. Mike Zimmer jokes around how he's never going to call anything a tweak anymore.
Yeah.
He got hammered last year over it, rightfully so, and but he thinks it's soon. Now, let's get to the offensive line. Speaking of Darisaw, he obviously isn't on the field yet and not competing. Starting Monday, the team will put on the pads. It's the first time they're allowed to put on the pads and start hitting. And that's when we see if KJ Osborn is good, because your whole movement is different when you've got a full set of pads on versus shorts and shirts with just a little, soft deal over there.
Yeah. And then the boxing.
The helmet, the rugby helmet type deal. Yeah. No, they're going to be full dressed up, so that's going to be interesting to see. There was a tweet. Let's see if I can find it real quick. Here it is. Courtney Cronin. Ted was giving her praise, and Courtney was asked about Wyatt Davis, and she's like, "Nah, I think they're cross-training him in case there's a need, because Cabral, who's the third-string center who was brought in, hasn't practiced because he's out for whatever reason, and plus it never hurts to have him as, available to do that." That got us into talking about, why do the Vikings keep swapping positions on their offensive linemen? I'll let you take this at first go round.
Dave, I like other Viking fans we know, am at a loss to understand why they keep on doing this, because my understanding is with the Davis thing is that if they've got an issue at center with Cabral not being able to play yet. And they've got Davis doing there as a backup option, cross training.
Center number 3.
But has he done any work at guard since training camp?
He's done some team 2 right guard spots.
But he's a guard. He's always been a guard. And he's going into the NFL. He's not State any high school. He's going to the NFL against some big boys, some people who they make this for a living. This is their, it's the best of the best. I would think that I'd want him taking the most reps at the position he's always played and was a 2-time All-American. I don't know, that seems to be pretty simple to have him taking a number of reps at center, taking away from the
his
position
reps
that
at
he's
guard. Now, if they want to double up his reps, that's cool, but it doesn't seem to be that way. Now, the only advantage of him doing extra snaps with Kellen Mond is Kellen Mond's getting the extra snaps as well.
But not from a guy that he's going to be
taking snaps from regularly, because hopefully Wyatt Davis is starting right guard. But speaking
just because it makes sense to keep guys busy, and I imagine they're pretty busy anyway. Mm-hmm. But I just, for the Vikings to do this, okay, so they got Davis playing center, practicing center somewhat. They got Oli Udoh, who, as far as I know, has always been a tackle and been practice at tackle the past 2 years, and now they got him at, it looks like, exclusively at right guard. Mm-hmm. Again, last year, Cleveland left tackle, at least they had him at guard right from the get-go, but it'd be one thing, and the way they moved around elf line and then the whole thing, like in the previous years, but none of this has really, as far as I can tell, none of this juggling around and moving of guys has worked yet. It hasn't resulted in in taking one guy from his normal position that he had in college, making him something else in the pros, and it has not resulted in a significant improvement in the guy's play. That is why I don't like the move with Davis. I want him at guard, so hopefully Dozier and Samia are not the guys out there starting week 1, week 2, and beyond. I want Wyatt Davis to be that guy. And I think with his track record, there's no reason why he couldn't beat out those 2 stiffs. Wow. And maybe Udoh is better as just
Udoh may be better than Dozier and Samia by himself. And a lot of college tackles come into the league and they're made into guards. Most of your guards, it's well over 50%, but most of your guards that are playing in the NFL played tackle in college. I can understand that move if you think that's what it's supposed to be. We were sold last year that Ezra Cleveland was the future left tackle of the team. They stuck him at right guard when the guard play went to absolute hell in a handbasket. We understood that. This year, they're saying, well, we're going to keep him at guard. We like him at guard because we just did a first-round draft choice on Darisaw, but we're going to move him back to the left side where he's more natural. He's played most of his time. I can buy off on that. I do believe linemen can play both sides. It is a transition, however, but it's easier when you're back on your own side.
Yeah, I would. Go ahead, Dave.
But Oli Udoh, if he comes in and he earns that right guard spot, I'm cool with that. It's tackle. He's got the same thing as Ezra. They got long arms. Generally, guards don't have the longest arms because the blocking style is slightly different in how you're doing it. A tackle, you want the long arms because the guy's going around your outside and you're blocking an outside. And there's a whole lot of speed and there's a whole lot of hand play in the fact that you're trying to keep his hands off of you. And as a tackle, you're trying to get your hands on the defensive end. All that goes into tackle play. A guard, though, plays literally in a more confined space. And he's playing against guys that are using power more than speed. Think of our defensive tackles, Tomlinson and Pierce. Those guys aren't going to speed rush around you on the outside. They're going to push you right? They can deal with contact. They want contact because then they feel they're stronger and they can control you and push you back into the quarterback. A guard's got to be able to take that and basically force on force, adjust, push, knock off lines. And that's why some tackles don't do well as guards. Hopefully that's the case. We drafted Wyatt Davis, two-time All-American at right guard, to play right guard. And now we have him playing a little bit of center. Now, I understand cross-training guys so they can move around. But first, at least in my opinion, you get them good at what you drafted them for. And then you could start cross-training around and say, hey, can he play center? Hey, we could actually use him as center. But let's get him used to the NFL, right? Ezra Cleveland's now used to the NFL. Let's get him used to the NFL first in a position where he knows the most before we start screwing with him. And that the whole idea of, and I think it's a Dennison thing, but it's been happening since 2015. Zimmer took over in 2014. The line was set, and then it's gone downhill ever since. Hopefully, they'll figure this out, but I don't think they will. And I don't think, believe it or not, I don't think Davis is going to win the spot. At least not at the beginning.
No, I think you're right. And
Which
it doesn't look like Darisaw will win the left tackle spot either because he's probably not going to be ready. It's always tough for a rookie to step in there anyway on the offensive line. At least that's what we've been told. But we have seen a lot of first-round left tackles in the past few years really struggle and not really start right from the get-go. So I think for Darisaw, as talented as he is, as we've been told, and as good as he is, and that we understand, for him to miss this amount of like rep time and training camp time, it seems like a stretch that the Vikings and we know that Zimmer in particular, not really a big fan of sticking a lot of rookies in there from the get-go. It rarely had happened except last year, which was more out of necessity than anything else. So I think that you're looking at, and it's not what we were hoping. I think you're looking at like a Rashad Hill, and then Cleveland, Bradbury, Dozier.
I'm hoping Udoh if it's not.
Yeah. Dozier, and then O'Neal
we'll
as your starting five. Like I say, we'll see. I don't think Davis is going to sniff the field in the first couple of games,
which
particularly.
It disappoints me. I thought he would. I thought he would got the starting position by a week from now, and he still may. The only ace he could possibly have up his sleeve, and we're talking Davis, is waiting to put on the pads and start hitting. Once they do that, then we're going to see where exactly all the linemen are, right? These guys are going against Tomlinson. Can they control Tomlinson? Can they control, Sheldon Richardson? If they can do that, they can then step up. Now, I did some querying during the week about what is Davis's issue.
Querying.
And I got two responses. Neither of these are confirmed. One of them is that he hasn't impressed anybody so far.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't impress, you're not going to move up. You've got to do it. We talked about Osborn impressing so far. If you don't impress, you're stuck. So he's got to do that. That's why I'm hoping with putting on pads and actually hitting, he starts to impress. That gives him the opportunity and shows that, hey, I was the right draft choice, and that's why you drafted me there. Let's do it. Now, he did obviously fall to round 3 where we got him from being previous, the year before. He was thought he's going to be a first rounder for sure, possibly top 10. He did get injured and he fell. Now, the other thing I'm hearing is he's not exactly in shape. He's a little bit overweight, which is not good. When you knew you were coming out into the league and you're trying to be in the best shape of your career, right, of your life, you want to be that coming into the league. And if that's the case, and like I said, I don't know, these are just words that have been passed to me, that's disappointing as well. That goes towards motivation. And these are things that should be found out during the scouting process prior to the draft. That's what you have draft departments for, asking about players and how their regimen is and how motivated they are, et cetera, et cetera.
We'll yeah, isn't it? As you said, Dave, none of these things are confirmed, but I was just going to say before you mentioned those two tidbits that it's a bit concerning for me that when you look at the state of the right guard position for the Vikings and that they got Dozier and Samia, the two worst rated. Again, we always preface this is Pro Football Focus. We know it's not like the gospel and everything, but they are the only outfit that ranks offensive line play and gives it any sort of a grade other than the teams themselves.
Right.
So you've got that, but we also, as fans, the eye test also told us that Samia and Dozier were bad, particularly on the pass protection. So you got those two guys competing. Udoh, who's a huge wild card, we don't know what he brings to the table as a guard because he's been
groomed as a swing tackle. Yep.
So if it's concerning to me, Dave, I don't know if you feel the same way. If Davis isn't automatically looking better than those three,
it's hugely concerning.
That's a problem. I'd never heard coming into the draft that work ethic was an issue for him.
I didn't either.
Injury was a problem last year, but the guy was like a two-time All-American and
he played
strong as an ox, which we needed on the interior. So he was going to be nasty and push people around. Where is that guy right now?
He's on COVID protocols, and he can't be back for a minimum of 5 days.
Yeah. Well, yeah. If you're going to be missing, I guess now is
not the time.
Yeah, not for a rookie, I guess, but I think better than the regular season. But anyway, yeah, the offensive line again. Here we go.
And we don't know why he's on COVID protocols, other than he was in close contact. He may be close contact and not have vaccinated, and that's going to give him 5 days. Theoretically, Kellen Mond could be back before everybody else is of that group because all he's got to do is test negative twice and he's back.
Right, yeah.
Whereas everybody else, it's a minimum 5 days. So
and there's another guy that needs to be in training camp doing stuff and not sitting out because of COVID protocol. Again, he's vaccinated, so he did everything that was required of him, and just bad luck. It happens. But, like I was really, as I'm sure you were, I'm not really all that keen on watching Jake Browning or Nate Stanley throw the ball in preseason, but Kellen Mond, I want him to be getting 2 quarters per game, and let's see what he's got. And we might have
last night, Jake Browning piqued my interest. I look forward to seeing him in a preseason game.
Yeah, again, it was only highlights, but some of the throws they showed, I've never barely seen him throw, even during his time. But he looked like he had pretty good zip on the ball. So I was kind of, what I remembered from him was that his arm strength was not all
that great. And in his first, he started out rough, and that rough part is he was underthrowing. But he adjusted and was hitting everything after that. He threw for over 70% on the 11 and 11 drills, 26 for 37. And
well, with him being the only quarterback there, it wasn't like he wasn't going to get lots of throws in.
Well, they said, counting all the warm-up throws and everything else, Jake Browning had over 90 throws last night, which is too much for a quarterback. They'll throw. They could, like a pitcher, throw his arm out this early. It's
yeah. I was gonna
see.
Say. Yeah, well, Jesse talking about Browning stepping up, and I guess that's not the greatest circumstances, but that is what we want to see from guys who are unproven, is that they get a opportunity and they make
they step up
best of the opportunity. I would hope that, knowing the playbook shouldn't be an issue for Browning, because this is his 4th year with the team. So I think he should know the playbook fine, and a lot of the players. It's just a matter of, can he perform at an NFL level? When he was at Washington, at one point, he was another guy, like his stock really dropped. He was potentially at one point a first round guy, and then he didn't get drafted.
Right, because the last 2 years he didn't produce like he did in the first 2. And Speaking of production, we now have Danielle Hunter back on the field. And
yes.
And we knew ahead of time that he looked great as Adonis body. We saw videos of his workout, but we were curious how he was going to be on the field. He's on the field now. And in shorts, helmet and shorts, there's only certain stuff you can do, but he has impressed as well so far this camp. There's a few stories on him. First one, let's see, where did I have it? Here. Courtney reports Mike Zimmer told a story of, asked if he was watching. He goes, not closely, but I had asked O'Neill. And O'Neill said he made this amazing move on the first time he went at him. And O'Neill asked him, what the heck is that? And he said, no, I don't know, it's just a move. And he goes, wow. So he's going to learn there's something. Mike Zimmer calls him slithery and long arms. He's just different. Hey, I'm all for him doing stuff like that. It was reported later he was on a quarterback in a fraction of a second on another play. And that he is just speed. All the clips I've seen, he is just zing, 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 and he's in. And O'Neill's good. O'Neill knows how to hold him up, but he looks better, and that he's been working on it. Now, there was another one. Again, Courtney. Daniil's been switching back and forth on the sides. Right? Daniil was normally our left defensive end. He's moved over to the right defensive end, or playing more right defensive end, Everson Griffin's spot. But he's bouncing back and forth. That tells me also, and subsequently, Wanham has been playing opposite side, outside linebacker responsibilities. And when we talked previous shows, that goes back to my high school 5-2 formation, where the defensive ends, if they're on the weak side, have pass responsibility, whether it be the guy going for the screen, backside screen, or in the flat if necessary. And that's what looks exactly what they're doing. But so far, Daniil has looked great. I look forward to when they put on the pads tomorrow and start actually hitting how that looks. What do you think?
I guess the number one question. So happy to see Mattison. So happy to see Hunter back on the field. Yes, happy. And our main concern was, okay, had the surgery, herniated disc, or I think that's what it was.
Herniated disc.
Yeah. So is he going to be the same Danielle Hunter that he was previous to that? And so far, and we know that he has to be, I think, because there's still huge question marks all over the Vikings roster as far as who could be the other defensive end or defensive ends that could provide any kind of pressure besides Hunter. And if Hunter isn't 100%, then you're probably looking at a pass rush that is not going to be terribly more effective than it was last year when it was very
bad,
ineffective, very bad. Couldn't put any pressure on the quarterback.
Bottom of the league.
So to see that Hunter is looking fast, slithery, the Danielle Hunter we've come to know and love is going to be, it's a huge relief for me. I think it's a huge relief for you, David. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be a big plus to the Vikings defense overall, because, it's great to have signed all these defensive backs and you get Kendricks and Barr back. That's all going to help the defense overall. But if you can't pressure the quarterback, eventually the pass coverage is, somebody's going to get open. Good quarterback's going to find them. First down, first down, first down, first down, first down.
Touchdown.
Touchdown. In the Vikings' case, field goal, missed field goal. So couldn't be happier to hear that Hunter's looking 100%, and maybe dare we say,
better.
Better. He did. It's not great, but you have a year off, not getting banged up, banged around. You come back fresh. I don't know how much that helps, but it can hurt. And I'm just glad to hear that it doesn't appear that the injury is impacting Hunter's play on the field at all,
so far,
which is going to be huge for the Vikings because, we don't know, like Weatherly, Wanham, Patrick Jones Jr., Janarius Robinson, Willikis, like none of those guys really strike any kind of fear into any defensive offensive coordinator or offensive lineman that's going to be facing them. Danielle Hunter will, and if he can command a lot of attention, that could help all the other guys. And I like that the thing about him moving around is that the Vikings started to do that, remember, in the New Orleans playoff game. They had him inside. I don't think that maybe that'll happen as much, but moving it around seems to make sense. It also might be an admission right now that the Vikings aren't really sure what they have opposite of Hunter at any time. So you might as well try to move him around so that maybe get a favorable matchup on a tackle as opposed to him facing like the one guy all the time.
Well, he has played a little bit on the other side.
Yeah.
But I think one of the reasons they're doing it this year, besides putting him on the blind side more, is that they are making that defensive front more unpredictable and how the offense is going to play against it. Because if one play he's on this side and one play he's on the next, and during those plays you might have Tomlinson and Pierce in the middle. The next one you have Richardson and Tomlinson, and those guys are shifting across the middle. And it's going to get awful confusing for opposing quarterbacks that don't know what they're doing to see all this stuff happening. And that opens up opportunities. And with the big guys in the middle, right, like you said, they're going to be taking – the question is who you're going to double team, because they're going to be eating up blocks, which leaves both the linebackers available to rush if we want to rush them. If Zim does, he shows it quite often, but his question is who, right? They may show up, and then we have Harrison Smith come off the edge or whomever, right? It's going to be exciting to watch this defense, because I think the defense, the one thing Zimmer's good at is evolving this defense, and I think he's going to do that this season. I think Danielle Hunter is key to that, and seeing him back in good, like we're seeing, is fantastic.
Be even more exciting when the Vikings trade for Chandler Jones, of course. Like Patrick Peterson was one saying they should do on the podcast. I'm like, yeah, sure, Patrick, dream on. I don't know how the Vikings are going to make that work as far as salary cap goes.
Another young top 5 defensive end. Oh, God. Ooh.
Yeah.
Zimmer's rubbing one off with that one. So I don't think it's going to happen, but yes, it would be nice.
Not a chance. I don't. Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to tell the fans?
Not really. It's been a while since we talked football, which is good. Yeah, we took a little bit of a hiatus because there wasn't a whole lot going on there for a time, particularly in late May and June. But back, and I always. This year, probably more so because last year we didn't have any preseason games, but really looking forward to getting to see the Vikings on the field in the preseason games. And I like you probably as well. It'll be interesting with one less preseason game. I'll be interesting to see how teams approach that with the players that they know are going to be on the team and are stars. You've got one less, how it all worked, right? The first game they play one series, the second game they play like maybe a quarter, third game is the dress rehearsal, and the fourth game none of them play. Well, now you've got one less game, but you've got one extra regular season game, one more, which means one more game with your starters playing an extra game, getting banged around, does that mean that teams play their starters and Givens superstars even less in preseason than they used to?
We'll find out.
Does that, I think that's going to be interesting to see how that's all played out and how teams approach that. And again, preseason's always like young guys. I want to see young guys. I want to see who flashes. And there's lots of guys that I'm interested in seeing how they do. Wyatt Davis, Surratt, Darisaw, if he ever gets on the fucking field.
Exactly.
Preseason.
Kellen Mond is the big one.
Kellen Mond.
Everybody wants to see Kellen Mond. I also now want to see Jake Reed when it comes to competition. Or not Jake Reed, Jake Browning.
KJ, you've been calling him Jake Reed the whole time.
Oh, sorry, Jake Browning. Hey, it's back in the days, 3 deep, Jake Reed. When it was just Jake Reed and Chris Carter, I mean, they were good. They're both 100-plus yard, 100-plus catch receivers and 1,000-yard receivers. And then we got Randy Moss, and it was 3 deep, and it was awesome. But
it was.
Jake Reed was always one I looked at, was a favorite player back in the day.
Yep.
So
love Jake Reed.
Now, since we're spooling up, Climb in the Pocket and is spooling up for its regular season broadcast schedule. During the regular season, you'll get 2 old bloggers with me and Darren as your first show of the weekend.
Whew.
Yes. So, and then we'll go through and we'll have 6 live shows a week. Starts off, of course, we kick it off. And 6 live shows a week. And plus other podcasts and other things thrown in there for your viewing and reading pleasure. But remember, it's the 2 old bloggers, the guys that are supposed to be wise, the ones with the extra years that start everything off. And with that, everybody have a great day, and Skol Vikings!
Skol Vikings!
Thank you for watching or listening. As always, if you like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. And if you're listening to the podcast, please rate us on your favorite aggregator. Skol, everybody.